everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's Strategic Planning Committee. We've got one shortage today. Councillor Thompson has just sent his apologies. We've got Councillor Fair standing in for Councillor Crook, I believe. Right. If I can just remind you to put phones on silent or switch them off, we'll get started. Right, item 2 minutes of the previous meeting. Can we pass them as a true record? Thank you. Item 3, these are the minutes of the Heavy Woolen and Huddersfield Area Planning Committees. Can we pass this item as a true record? Thank you very much. Item 4, declarations of interest and lobbying. I'll start off with Councillor Sokol.
None, Chair.
Councillor Firth?
None.
Councillor Pattison?
None, Chair.
Councillor Pinnett?
None, Chair.
Councillor Armour?
None, sir.
And myself? None. This is a public meeting. We're on Wi-Fi, so no stamping your feet, clapping or swearing, shouting. Item 6, deputations and petitions.
No deputations or petitions, Chair.
Thank you. Right, item 7, we did undertake a site visit this morning at Kirklees, Staincliffe, Dewsbury. Everything went well. Right, item 9, planning application. This is for the Occupational Lane and Kirklees, Staincliffe, Dewsbury, and it's Elenia that's taking us through it.
Thank you, Chair. So I will just share my screen for you all. Wonderful. So the application, as discussed, is the land off of Occupation Lane, Staincliffe, Dewsbury, which is 1.9 metres north of Dewsbury train station. So the application is for the creation of 18 apartments, and this is via the conversion of 3 dwellings into 6 separate apartments, which is to the north of the site here, and the erection of a 12 apartment block to the south of the site. This application has been called to committee by Councillor Pandor. Oh, sorry, I'm not too sure. It should be. It was on display. That's really strange.
Click on slideshow. Click on that.
It's not showing my screen anymore. Oh, it's crashed.
Right, try sharing again.
Right, I'll just explain to people who are watching at home. We've just got a big hammer out to one of the computers and it's working. We're up and running again. So we'll carry on.
Okay, so as I was saying, in terms of the units, if you could go on next slide, please. So that's the site location. Next slide, please. That's the current layout of the site, which shows the units to the north that will be converted into 6 apartments. And then next slide, please. And then this is showing what the proposed site layout will be. So as I was saying, the application was called to committee by Councillor Pandor due to sort of concerns in terms of highways within the area and the sort of scale of overdevelopment of the site. In terms of the proposal would provide accommodation for individuals that are up to 65 years old that have sort of mental health needs, and it would provide supported living that is more flexible than sort of traditional care facilities, which is why the proposal would be retaining a C3 use opposed to a C2 use. In terms of consultations, there has been 2 rounds of public consultation associated with the application, which has received 18 objections overall. Following a period of reconsultation which expired on the 11th of March, which was in response to amended plans being requested by officers, 5 extra objections were received, which brings the total to that 18, and the details of the objections can be found within the officer report. The next slide, please. In terms of consultations, for consultees, we have consulted Yorkshire Water, Kirklees Council Trees, the LLFA, Environmental Health, Crime Prevention, Adult Services, Kirklees Highways and Kirklees Council's Waste, and we haven't received any sort of objections. In terms of, as you can see on the screen, these are the elevations of the second building, which would be to the south of the site and the 12 apartment block. I think if you could go to the next slide, please. So this is the floor plan for that 12 apartment block. So the site would provide a good standard of living for future occupants, with each flat having a minimum space standard of 47 metres squared. In terms of usually for to comply with national described space standards, a 1-bedroom unit would be required to have a floor space of 39 metres squared. So as you can tell, that sort of far exceeds that. In terms of the next unit. This is what the sort of conversion of the terrace road to the north will look like, and the next slide of that should provide the 4th floor plan. In terms of the layout of the site, yeah, you can go on the next slide if you like. There'd be 9 parking spaces provided on site through the retention of 3 parking spaces to the north and a provision of 6 additional parking spaces to the south of the site. And officers' recommendation is to approve the application subject to details of a Section 106 agreement, which would be for 100% affordable housing, biodiversity net gain, public open space, drainage and management and maintenance of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Sheila, we've got some speakers.
Sorry, we've got Tony Banks, he's on Teams.
Right, we'll call Tony in then first. You've got 3 minutes. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
You've got 3 minutes,
Yeah.
Tony, starting now.
Okay. So we've been working alongside the developer of looking at the site for some years now. It first came up around about 2019. Fits well with adult services direction of creating more supported accommodation options for people with mental health problems, learning disabilities. So fits into our market position statement. It's in an ideal location, close to the hospital, good facilities locally. easy access for people on public transport into Heckman White, Dewsbury, and potentially further afield, and will support us in expanding the provisions that we have in North Kirklees currently. We're now getting to the point where we do need some additional provision in North Kirklees, alongside the provisions that we have in South Kirklees and the ones in Gummersall. So it'll support us in fulfilling that. Obviously, it's going to take some time to build should everything go through. And we would be working very much directly with the housing provider, and we will be commissioning the support provision there. So we'll be very much in contact with the service, continually monitoring that and working together to ensure that the quality of the provision there and other things. The premise of supported accommodation, especially supported accommodation, is an alternative to the sort of more traditional residential care, which often for people with mental health problems is not ideal, really. So having somewhere to live that they can call their own and living in proper accommodation with that support on site, which they can access. So there'll be 24-hour support available. There'll be a core amount of hours, and then additionally, if recognised through their assessment process, they need additional support, that will be provided as well. So it's not a traditional sort of mental health residential establishment. You've got smaller numbers of staff, and this support is on site to enable them to continue in their rehab and recovery towards more independent living, with the view that they would be looking to move on in 2 to 3 years at most into their own accommodation, potentially with some other support there, but hopefully managing to live independently.
That it, Tony?
Yep.
Right, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Our final speaker is Councillor Pandor, who's got 5 minutes, starting from now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to come and put the case forward on behalf of the residents. It seems like ages ago this application came forward, and I couldn't really remember the details, but I've had a look at it, and it's jogged my memory regarding why I asked for this to come to Planning Committee. Many years ago, Thomas Car Mills was a vibrant mill providing employment locally, and what happened was the business went bankrupt and it closed down. And then we were working very, very hard with the local residents to come up with a solution to knock the building down, but at the same time put new houses there, which we managed to do, working in partnership with the developer, the agents and the local community. And where this area is, Chair, was allocated, from my understanding, as an urban meadow for the local people to benefit. And now it appears that we've got an application here for it to be developed. I understand that there is a need in terms of the clientele, and I completely accept that. But looking at the local area, and you've been this morning, the roads are very, very narrow, especially as you go up Occupation Lane onto Kilpin Hill. It becomes very, very narrow. Car parking is at a premium, and I do get regular complaints about people parking, and you know, we need to do something around there in terms of traffic management. And from my point of view, it's out of character and not in line with what's already there. You've already received 13 objections and a further 5 objections on the second round of consultation. Our main concerns are parking, highways, wildlife, access regarding emergency vehicles, the overbearing nature of the proposed development, and access to pedestrians. So that's all I've got to say, Chair. I hope the committee takes into consideration, but I do understand that there's been a lot of movement that's been taking place since I put my objections forward. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Shabir. Right, members, it's over to you. Councillor Sokol, then Councillor Firth.
I just want to ask a couple of questions, yeah. Councillor Pandor stated in his statement in here, when the original application was submitted by the Thomas Carmel, even Councillor Pandor mentioned that it was agreed that the land should be kept as it was an urban being. Do we have any proof of that? Or did we receive any application that time, some time ago? Second is, Mr. Chair, I want to know, this is 20% affordable houses, 4 units socially. Those 4 units would be in a new apartment, or in the apartment they're going to make alteration? Thank you.
Okay, so I can sort of clarify the points with relation to the wildlife murder that you'd mentioned. So in terms of, I did have a look at the sort of history of the site and the surrounding area. So the section of land that is sort of south of the terrace row is currently in private ownership. The land to the west of the site is forms a separate Section 106 agreement, which was done in collaboration with the surrounding housing development. And obviously we've been on site today, and that's sort of section of land has been delivered and has been retained. So in terms of finding the sort of planning history, in terms of specifications, in terms of what was agreed in that land, it wasn't sort of included as any part of the applications that we saw. In terms of the affordable housing contribution. So the developers actually come in with the site in terms of it was to be 100% affordable housing. It was officers' understanding when I was sort of working through the Section 106 side of things that to make it sort of policy compliant, I would need to do the sort of 20%. However, I've received clarification that we would be able to secure this as 100% affordable housing, and that would be provided through a Section 106 agreement, which the head of terms would be updated with the applicant.
Next, it's Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. When initially, I saw this plan application a long time ago as well, and I thought it is a big unit, and if we all got cars, they'll be held to pay in that part of the world, because it is a very busy and well-inhabited little place. But then, of course, I read the papers this time round, and I'm delighted now that I did read it again. It's a windfall site. There'll be 18 units on it. It's very unlikely that any of those residents will have a vehicle. So the only vehicles that will come into the site are staff and perhaps an odd visitor too. So to my mind, it fits very well and tidies up what is a, to be honest, it's not made of land, it's a bit of a grot spot now in front of this building. Our area at the side, the Ransom strip at front, and the landscape bit that goes around the corner is very nice, it's very tidy, but the other bit is not very good. It's a windfall site, if we could look at it like that. So I think it ticks all the boxes for me. And even though it's very early in the meeting, can I move the officer recommendation, Chair?
Thanks, Eric. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm happy to second Councillor Firth's motion. I think it's a good use of the land and existing buildings. I've got just a point I'd like a bit of clarification on. Now, I appreciate what's said about most residents not having a vehicle. I understand that, I accept that. What I'm wondering about is that there's no EV charging at all. I don't know whether it's an expensive provision to make. I would like advice on that. But I would like consideration to be given to providing at least, one EV charging point for the staff, because the staff are going to be there all night or all day, and they may have a need for EV charging. Thank you.
In terms of the provision for sort of electric vehicle charging points, it's something that could be secured via condition for the application. As I said, there's sort of the 3 units retained to the north, and then there's the 6 units retained to the south. So I suppose would that be?
We could put one charging.
Sorry, we could put one charging point. I was suggesting one of those 6 to the front. There's one of those is a disabled place, make another one an EV charging. I thought when I was reading through it yesterday, I think one of the consultees actually requested environmental health. I actually put that as a condition. Actually, must have slipped through. So yeah, a condition for an EV charging point for one bay be fine. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next is Andrew, and then it will be Carol.
Thank you, Chair. I actually want to thank Councillor Pandor for bringing this to committee, because we wouldn't have been able to have this discussion. It would have been decided by officers. And I think it's quite valuable for us to look at sites like this, because they raise all sorts of questions that we need to test against our local plan and how it actually works. Personally, I think that everything that's been said about the usefulness of this development, I agree with. It's going to deal with a site that is not brilliant. All right, it's not built on. I take that point, but it will provide housing for a group of people who, in some respects, desperately need it, and I think in such a way that will help their movement back into what might be described as ordinary life. I just some people have already remarked on the car parking issue. Whilst we can't, well, I don't think we can say, if you live here, you can't have a car. I don't know whether we are saying that, you know, that there is a very high likelihood that people won't have cars. I don't know how you test that. I'm just ever so slightly worried about that there might be an occasion when it happens that there are more people in the building who've got cars than there are spaces for. But you may tell me that you think that is unlikely. But otherwise, I support the application, particularly with the addition of the EV charging point.
Yeah, I mean, we've no specific parking standards for provision of this type. We've taken a view that effectively there's one space for 3 units. There's 9. Sorry, there's 9 spaces. I won't my math. 1 space per 2 units. We've taken a view that even if I think it is unlikely, we tend to view it's unlikely. I think even if there was the odd person who did have a car, we would still have sufficient capacity on site to park.
But is there bike storage? Yes.
There's 18 spaces. Yeah. And it is, as we said this morning, it's a relatively comfortable walk to the bus stops, so it's fairly sustainable as far as public transport goes. Yeah.
Tony, do you want to come in on this car parking issue? I think you've indicated.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that really it probably is unlikely that people will have transport of their own or car. They may well have a bike or something like that, but it's not predominant. Not expected that most people would have a car, so I think the numbers of people who would require any parking space are most likely the staff, and the premise of supported accommodation is that you have a lower level of staff on site anyway.
Yeah, right, thank you, Tony, for that. Councillor Pattison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on the parking. I would have thought parking is more likely to be visitors to the residents, the natural residents themselves, but and hopefully that isn't too much of a problem. I actually had just one question, which is a very sort of silly question almost, but on the front elevation of the apartment block, there are 2 doors. As the door on the left, a dummy door, looking at the floor plans, it looks as if it is. Because the access is from the rear of the property, isn't it, not the front? Except there is the door on the right-hand side is into the staff accommodation, it seems.
Just to clarify, are you meaning the 6 apartment or the 12 apartment?
The 12,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it would appear that they haven't included the sort of indication for a door opening on their floor plan, so it must be an omission with that. But based on sort of the other ones, I'd assume that one would be a dummy door.
Yeah. No, it's, as I say, it's a silly question, really. I mean, it's got nothing to do with whether or not you accept the application. The other thing, actually, has got nothing to do at all either with whether or not we accept the application, but I was pleased to hear, because I was concerned about the management support or the support to residents after the property's been built, but I'm pleased to hear that Kirklees will be commissioning that, so I think I can rest assured on that basis. So I'm happy to, oh, it's already been seconded, hasn't it? So I'm happy to support the application.
Eric.
Thank you, Chair. What I did fail to mention, and I'm sure Councillor Pando will be delighted, that there is a commuted sum for the park at the end of the road, which will be very welcome, I'm sure, by your residents, Councillor Pando.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So just for members to know, obviously we've got a change there to the officer recommendation to include 100% affordable housing in perpetuity for the section 106 as opposed to what was written in the report. And the second change is the additional condition for EV charging point. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Right. There we have it. It's been moved, it's been seconded. It's an area that I know exceptionally well. And it's, as being said, it's a win-win situation. Unfortunately, this day and age, it's the kind of new build that we do need. Getting more and more people with dementia, more people with mental health issues. So I am very, very glad that this is our last application of this municipal year, and it's a bloody great application. So it's been moved by Councillor Firth, seconded by Councillor Armour. So we'll go to a vote. Sheila.
So you're voting on the officer recommendation to delegate approval subject to the section 106, as David's just outlined. It's 100% affordable housing and an additional condition regarding the EV charging point. Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Firth?
For.
Councillor Pattison?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Armour?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Just before we finish, I want to say thank you to all officers from governance, planning, highways, IT, for doing a great job with us for another year. And hopefully, I'll see you again in May. If not, but thank you very much for everything you've done. I'll be, as Arnie says, I'll be back. Thank you and goodbye.